Welcome to the Fearless Homeschool podcast with Macaulay, talking everything homeschooling, family, learning and life. A space where we can learn and grow together because
why do it alone?
Hello and welcome to this week's two-part chat with Krystel Watts from Engaging Minds. I had a lot of fun chatting with my mate across the Tasman, hearing more about her homeschool and how it has evolved and is evolving as she continues to homeschool 7 of her 8 children. As we chat, Krystel shares how her homeschool was inspired by Montessori method and the Charlotte Mason method in the earlier years of the homeschooling journey, but how there was a shift to classical as her children grew older and into their teen years. What I loved about this episode is how Krystel includes curriculum and formal learning in their day, but she also shows that this learning style still needs a deep understanding of your child and the ability to identify and be flexible with curriculum choices, and to acknowledge when rest and developmental growth is required before moving on with that curriculum. So buckle down and join Krystel and I in what feels like a coffee chat between two mates. See you in there.
welcome back, everybody. And today we have our first New Zealand guest, which I'm so excited, Krystel Watts, who has become one of my more chaotic and funny friendships over the years. So I'm really excited to have her here, but I'm not sure where we'll go with this. Krystel's from Engaging Minds in New Zealand. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Krystel to talk about who she is and what drew her and her family to homeschooling. So welcome, Krystel.
Thank you, Macaulay. Yes, our friendship is rather chaotic, but it's fun. It's a fun chaotic. I love it.
It is a fun chaotic.
All right, guys. So as Macaulay said, Krystel here from Engaging Minds. I am first and foremost a wife to my darling Chris and a mum to 8 children. I've been homeschooling now for 15 years, so a wee while. I'm in my 15th year. My eldest is 9, youngest is 2, and we've got a range of kids in the middle. What started us out in homeschooling? Short story. The short version is our eldest, when he was 5 years old, we were looking at schools, as you do, and we didn't like the school that he could get into, the only school that he was zoned for. We just weren't happy with it. And then all the other schools were, this is going back in my memory banks now, but essentially we couldn't get him into them. So it was all really, really long wait lists. And we had a lovely family at church that homeschooled and their kids weren't weird. And I was like, oh, maybe we could. And it kind of just planted the idea in our head, essentially. And we thought, in New Zealand, we don't have to send our kids legally to school until they're 6. So we've got this beautiful window, essentially, between 5 and 6, where we don't have to legally send them and we don't have to legally do anything either. So we thought, we'll give it a go. And we did, and we fell in love. And yeah, like I said, 15 years in.
That's awesome. And if for those of you who don't know, the New Zealand system is very similar to the Australian system, where you're zoned to a public school and people will buy houses and move to houses for specific schools. But from what I can understand, and I haven't done any research, is it's actually even more expensive than probably what we have to go the next level, not public school. So even if the waiting list is there, it can be quite expensive to try and put your child through a non-public school. Is that right, Krystel?
Well, we wouldn't even look at private. There's no way we could afford private. That's thousands. Yeah. And I don't even think there was one in our area. But just to be on a waiting list for a public school.
Oh, that wasn't in your zone. Oh,
that wasn't in our zone, was a long list. Like there was no guarantee we'd actually get in. So we're like, oh, well, let's try.
Opportunity.
Basically, yeah. And knowing other homeschoolers, and they were weird in a good way, as in like they could hold a conversation with an adult.
Yes.
These kids. So yeah, that's how we started, and we fell in love and haven't looked back.
Now, most kids are weird anyway, so everyone just has their different weird. What is the so from there? So you, like you said, you had this beautiful time where from 5 or 6. You got to play anyway and just see what would happen before you made a strict decision. So what was the main philosophy or approach you went with? Did you jump into something that you had done a lot of research, or was it kind of a feel as we go situation with your first?
It was basically a feel as we go situation, but when I was first researching homeschooling, I realized that I was doing it all anyway. So the pre-primer stuff, I was doing that at home anyway as a mum. So it came very natural to me. You know, like he already knew his colors and his numbers and his letters, because while we were sitting there playing cars, I would count the cars. All that really basic, beautiful primer stuff that you could do with kids without a curriculum. I had done all that. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to have to keep doing this, but level it up. Like, I'm just going to have to do a little bit better. So I did start researching homeschool stuff, but after we kind of had decided to homeschool, then I started researching approaches. Well, I knew I had my 12-month window.
Perfect.
And I could. But I actually fell in love with Montessori when I first started. So I leaned towards Charlotte Mason and I leaned towards Montessori. Charlotte Mason because of reading out loud, which we were doing already. So I'm like, I learned about that, and then I learned, okay, so I shouldn't just be reading out loud picture books. We need to be reading out loud chapter books and really advancing his language and doing that. Anyway, so we just picked a book I wanted to read. That's a super tip for those that don't like reading out loud. Pick one you want to read, then you're more likely to say yes to your kid when they ask, because you want to know what happens next. And we just did life, really. We just kept doing life in that first year. As you do.
And so what part of Montessori, that was a surprise for me, so I'm excited to deep when someone says something that I wasn't ready for. I like it. So
Sorry.
What part of no, it's good. What part of Montessori? So Charlotte Mason Read Aloud, which is a very strong theme through the podcast so far, and homeschoolers, like the Charlotte Mason Read Aloud. As you hear all these episodes, you will hear that. And I think that's a really good tip about read something you like. But it's also understanding, I think it really quickly gets you this understanding of learning not having to be written or learning not having to be proven. The fact that you've just read that book to them, there's learning happening. But what was the parts of Montessori that drew you?
Learning through play and learning through life. So the setting up our house in a way that was accessible to our little people. So when Isaac was 5, I had a newborn as well. So we'd had our second son. So we had more kids coming up the ranks as well. And I really wanted to set up the house that was accessible to him. So having a little table he could sit at and play at. And he could play Lego, or he could play Play-Doh, or whatever. Or just having the cups down at his level so he could get a drink. Just setting up life that way that he could do life himself, and learning all those life skills, and that you learn through play.
Yep.
And it was just beautiful.
But isn't it funny, because people laugh at me all the time. We have our cups. And this was just a natural thing for me because it was easy. It wasn't because I'd read anything about Montessori. This was before we started homeschooling, right? Our cups are in a drawer down the bottom. Yep. You know how always cups are up the top. They're near the tea, wherever the tea is, and all that sort of stuff. Ours is down in the drawer with the plates, or just above the plates, so that the kids can grab it. It's made my life so much easier. I couldn't have to think about having to be asked to get a glass for my kids. They'd still have to be asked right now. One's 11, one's 8, unless they stood on a stool, at which, then they're climbing instead of actually. It's just so interesting how simple a lot of the stuff is once you start reading through it.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I fell in love with right at the start. And things like having all his toys organized and accessible to him. So we started out, as you kind of do when he was really little, with one big toy box. But I got sick of dumped out toys. Like literally it would get emptied at the end of the day. And I'm like, I'm so over tidying this darn toy box. And then I came across the Montessori method, and they're like, put it on shelves, put things in containers, in baskets, whatever, in shelves, and then teaching your kid to get one toy out at a time. You play with that toy and you pop it back. And man, it keeps your house so much tidier. It's awesome. Thoroughly recommend trying it. So you don't have to do shelves. We've done drawers over the years. I've got drawers now for my little ones at the moment. And it's having toys accessible to kids and not always having to ask frees mum up massively. That independent play.
Yep. Yeah, and it's big on that for Montessori. The big is the independent child. So that was your early days.
Yes.
And how did you stumble on these? So you said you did a bit of research, but how did you stumble upon these two? Like how did you find out about them?
I'm trying to remember now. Because there wasn't as much, so we're going back 15 years, so there wasn't as much information online as there is now. I do remember in the early days, I came across Kathy Duffy, and I still absolutely adore Kathy Duffy and her website, and I actually ended up purchasing her book, and a lot of the information about different styles of home education are within the first couple of chapters of her book.
Beautiful.
So that's sort of what drew me in, and then I would know how to choose curriculum, and it really guided me. Knowing those two things, that I was drawn towards Montessori and drawn towards Charlotte Mason, helped me then choose, okay, if I like those philosophies, I can then better choose curriculum going forward.
Yeah.
But I can't really remember how I found out about it. Sorry.
And I think seriously, the 15 years ago type of thing, there was the word of mouth, and books is being our big thing.
Yes.
Because you're right, there was this stuff wasn't really happening as much.
Oh no. Definitely not. There wasn't even big, in New Zealand, there wasn't even big Facebook groups, because I started one of the first national ones because I wanted more information and more connection. So there wasn't even Facebook groups around.
Yeah. So you really
it
had
makes
to
me
look.
feel old.
No, we're all in the same boat, mate. We're all in the same boat.
Yes.
So what you sort of started talking about, spoke about Montessori and Charlotte Mason in terms of what you took from them, but what were the main cornerstones that you took from them in your day for each kid as you went around? So you talked about the toys, you talked about read aloud, but what else? What kind of were those cornerstones that pulled you there? And I know that those weren't the only styles you used, so if anything else gets pulled in, go for it.
So, I'm just trying to think. It's changed and it's morphed over the years, but I guess it changes as the kids have gotten older. For my little ones, I do still teach very Montessori style. And on that, I know one of the things about the Montessori approach is the products are super expensive. I actually made a lot of my own, so don't get put off buying the perfect Montessori thing. Take the style, take the feel, take the philosophy. I DIY'd heaps because there's no way I could afford the beautiful wooden toys. Cornerstones. Oh, for us, it was an importance to teach math, written word, so English, I guess, so good penmanship, and being able to articulate yourself well in writing. So as the kids came through their primary years, I wanted a really solid math curriculum that I could teach them well, and I knew that I wasn't going to miss anything. I didn't want to pick and choose when it came to math, so I did follow a curriculum. And everything else, we were like, nah, we could do Charlotte Mason style. So I'm very eclectic in that way. And then as my kids have gotten older, so once we've hit intermediate high school level, we tend to then lean towards a more classical education.
Which is so funny, because the other people that have spoken about classical, right, it's been in reverse. So I'm really interested when you said this. Yes, so they've done classical as younger children, like, the rote learning, the logic, the first pillar. And then as the kids have gotten older, they've found that their kids have sort of pushed back on that classical style of learning. And so when you said this, it was really exciting. I thought this is going to be great on the podcast, because this is what people have to understand. Every family is different. Cool. Yep. Every child is different. And so just because you think that this has happened for someone else, well, here you go. This is how we flicked over. So for you started Charlotte Mason, you had a maths curriculum, and you were doing sort of Charlotte Mason and Montessori for the rest of it. That's how your day went.
Basically, yeah.
Because you can learn everything through reading books if you are very intentional with your books.
Correct. And that's sort of what we started to do as a family. We started to get very intentional at the library, started to get very intentional with the books that we have bought. as well. I love living history. I hated history as a kid, like detested it. It was so boring. But I love. Well, no, but because I didn't have living books. But when I came across living history books, that I devoured them, and I still do as an adult now. And that's what I wanted for my kids. So that's probably the biggest thing I've taken from Charlotte Mason. Although, see, funny, science curriculum is a Charlotte Mason-ish style as well. So I still lean towards that now, that you can learn through. It doesn't have to be boring. It can be very conversational style, and you can read about it and you can get so much from it. But the kids still do their history is all living books, essentially.
Beautiful. And so then you said you brought in the sort of, I always go to say well-trained mind instead of classical. You brought it because that is the classical Bible, basically. You brought that in, and how and why as they got older?
So I guess how did it come about? So I've got to go with my eldest, Isaac. So he's 19, he's finished. He's all good. He's working full time now. But he hated writing, and I tried so many other writing curriculums, and he just detested it and fought me, and there were tears and there were yelling, and it was not fun. So we gave up writing, essentially. But he was an avid reader, so he could spell, and he could tell me a story. If I asked him to verbalize something, he could do it for me. Absolutely wonderful. So we did a lot of that. But I still needed him to be able to put his thoughts on paper. He just couldn't, even writing a letter to someone, he struggled. I'm like, dude, you need to be able to do this. So I came across an English curriculum. It was IEW, actually. And that was our personal saving grace for him. He did that. It's not traditional classical, but it's got classical roots in the way that it teaches. And he devoured it and he loved it. And within like 18 months, I had a kid that could write, because it was explicit and it was short little lessons, and it wasn't higgledy-piggledy from everywhere, but it was this very much scope and sequence, layering, foundational course that he could make his way through and function, essentially. And then the more I've learned about the way our brain works and the way we learn, the more I'm leaning towards the importance of explicit teaching in certain areas. So not everything, only in certain areas. That also with teaching to write, my kids, we've done a lot of copy work, and that's very classical. But I've now learned, as my kids have gotten older, mostly the ones at a certain age when I had a baby and we didn't do school for 6 months and they kind of did their own thing. I'm being honest. Having a newborn's hard.
There's seasons of homeschooling. This is what they need to know. Yeah.
We every time I had a baby, and I've got 8 kids, so that's been quite often. The last 3 months of the pregnancy wipes me out, and the first 3 months of having a baby wipe me out. So we essentially do reading out loud, and we do math for 6 months. And my kids are great. My kids are well educated, so you can do it. It's not terrible.
That sounds like our normal week sometimes, and it's not with the newborn, so.
And that's okay, because I knew I was covering the basics, and I knew that they were reading good literature. So they were learning good language, and they were still learning, and that's fine. Life happened, and they were learning to do life with me as well. Anyway, that's a tangent. Back to what we're talking about, classical.
Yes.
So my kids some of those kids had terrible handwriting, even though they'd done copy work. But that was because I had lacked on the explicit teaching on the letter formation. So my teenagers, I've had to then come and correct bad letter formation when they then want to do fast handwriting. They're doing their F backwards or something like that. Like, they've got beautiful writing, but they're not forming their letters correctly. And I didn't realize, I didn't pick it up. And so as a teenager, that's now a problem, because they're wanting to write, needing to write more and needing to write faster and needing to write fluently, and correct letter formation is vital for that. So that's a very classical thing that I've realized that I should have done younger and will be doing with my younger children, is ensuring that explicit teaching happens for letter formation, because it is vital for older kids. You just
Yeah,
don't
and
notice it usually.
but what's cool about this journey that you're on with them is that obviously they're feeling that it's quite onerous, and so they want to fix it anyway. They want to
Yes.
change that anyway. So either way, it's happening in their journey. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean? Like, so that's so interesting. So the other thing I picked up on that you were speaking about that I think is really important for people to hear is that some kids, and I know this from one of my children, in some subjects or some areas of her learning, floating through and just going with the flow and learning that way works. In other situations, they want something that they just want to be told, get it done, move on, because they don't want it to be exciting. They want it to be really explicit because maybe cognitively having too much going on means that what they're trying to learn doesn't get learnt. And so it's understanding that about your kid as well. Like, yes, reading Charlotte Mason books and doing that style will work for everything for a kid, but then they might need this explicit learning for this. And you learn
Exactly.
you learn it pretty quickly when they're looking at you going, I don't care about connecting maths to art, Mum. I just want my art to be art. If you need to connect right now, I don't want to connect maths to real life, if that makes sense. So it's about understanding that there is going to be mixtures of things within your curriculum. And I mean, you with 8 kids, there must be so many different mixes that you've had to do for the different kids.
Yes, and when that's what's kind of happened, although I have used the same curriculum often all the way through because it works. So I've just found what works for us as a family, and that's very different than what's going to work for, say, your family. You've only got 2 kids. I need certain curriculums that I can't do the one-on-one. I don't have enough hours in the day to be one-on-one with all of my children. I need them to be independent, and I need them to be doing video courses and somebody else to be doing the teaching. That's why. And then I need to also then be doing group stuff. So I've picked as my kids. So I've kind of had my eldest Isaac's a bit of a snowball. He's 4.5 years older than my next one down. So he's kind of not been educated by himself, but he kind of has. And then I've got a group of 3 boys that we had like literally bang, bang, bang. They were there. I think there's 4.5 years between the 3 kids. So I'm tending to now group them together and teach them with science and teach them English together as a group. So as they are now entering their, I've got one of them is a high schooler, one of them just about high school this year, actually, first year high school, and then intermediate. So now that they're getting older, I'm grouping that learning, more structured learning together. And that's working. That's working within our day because I'm not teaching that one-on-one time. I'm teaching 3 kids at once, or 4 kids, because my 8-year-old tags in with the big boys as well, while my toddlers run amok.
Yeah, beautiful. When you talk about, because I know people will be hearing teaching and they'll be like, oh, how many hours are you doing in a day, in a week, of this style of structured learning? Just so people can understand or get a feel for that.
For us, okay, so we use a math curriculum called Matthew C. So that's the video teaching. So I don't do any teaching with that. The video does it for me, but I will supervise that. So they do that at all different times of the day. So I'm just there. Actual teaching that I do, probably an hour a day, in all honesty. So we do it 2 times a week. We do science twice a week and English twice a week, and I'm doing the teaching then. But that's for 4 kids. And that's that group one-on-one teaching, small group learning, and then they will work for another half an hour or so, or the older kids work for a bit longer, doing the work included. So I'm there, but I'm not teaching necessarily. So literally a couple of hours a day I put in. Yep. And the kids are only doing, my big kids are doing more than my little ones, obviously, but my older kids would probably do, okay, if you're talking sit down structured work, couple of hours a day. Sit down structured work will be a couple of hours a day, max.
Yeah. And that's your older kids, and they're
14 and
secondary.
almost 15 and 13.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. I just want people to understand that even if people are saying they're doing curriculum, they're doing structured learning, it's a very small portion of their day and of their week.
Yep.
And it could be for a myriad of reasons. Some kids need that. Other parents, that's how their brain works to know they've ticked off your English, your maths. And then, hey guys, free range, let's learn some other stuff. Let's learn as a family. Let's do our read alouds and all that sort of stuff. How do you pick read alouds for such a big age group?
So that has honestly fallen off the wagon a little bit, that we need to pick it up again this year. But my husband's been doing the read alouds for the last couple of years, which is really cool. I miss reading out loud to my kids. I haven't done it. My husband has. We will pair them off. So we've read out loud to the older two, and then Chris will be reading a different book to the younger two. But essentially, it's what they want to read. It's what we want to read to them and what they want to listen to. But the problem we now have is our kids are such avid readers, all of them, thankfully, that they've already read all of our favourite read out louds, and we now have to find more. Or they will beat us to reading it. Like, they will whip the book off the shelf that we have planned as a read out loud and read it before we do. So, but my husband loves to read Lord of the Rings. He's an avid Lord of the Rings fan. So he has read that to the boys, and that takes like a whole year. I think it's taken him a whole year to read through the 3 Lord of the Rings books.
That's intense language. That's really intense language. If anyone has tried to read, I actually haven't got through them all because it's intense language. So there you go. It's like I've just pretended Jules Verne doesn't exist for my kids yet, because I want to read all the Jules Verne to them. And I'm like, you're not allowed to read it.
So you're saving it.
You're not allowed to read it. We're doing it this year because Charlie boy will be a good age now for us to read it. So it's Jules Verne just hasn't existed. There's been no books on this stuff.
I
want to read that with you.
That's sneaky, but I like it. Well, there's kind of Lord of the Rings. Like, literally, the kids aren't allowed to read it until Chris has read it out loud to them.
Yeah.
So, but the Hobbit's got to come first, obviously. So we read the Hobbit first to the little kids, the younger, when they're younger, and then, yes. But, so you're talking about structured learning. I did want to say, we actually run on a 4-day-a-week school day as well. So I want to bring that in for your listeners, because we only do school Monday to Thursday. Friday is always a swing day, always. So if we have, so my structure, I guess, my routine is set on 4 days out of 5. So if we have visitors on a Tuesday or visitors on a Wednesday, sweet. Or we've got something better to do, like go out because we want to. Life. Then school gets scrapped for the day and we catch up Friday. So if you can do it, I thoroughly recommend doing a 4-day scheduled day of learning and having that swing day, because it takes the stress out of it. We're never behind because we've got a swing day to catch up. It's just, it works.
We've set ourselves up to succeed, basically, which is beautiful.
Yeah, life will always happen.
Yes. And always. I think you're choosing to homeschool because of that, aren't you? To ensure that you can participate in life and they learn through life. I don't know of a homeschool family, to be honest, maybe when they first come out, I don't know of a homeschool family that lasts very long doing 5 days a week.
It's too much. It's too hard. I've got stuff I want to do too. Or housework, or house maintenance, or gardening, or going out. Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely we do. And bookwork's only even mornings as well. So mornings work for our kids. Essentially, we're done with formal learning by lunchtime, majority of the time. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's a wrap on part 1 of my conversation with Krystel. And who else loves hearing from a seasoned homeschooler that it's totally okay to make sure your homeschooling routine also gives you time for yourself? Be sure to tune into part 2, where Krystel shares how, even though her kids never attended traditional homeschool, she had to let go of that school mindset. She also opens up about how her experience with her eldest has helped her feel more relaxed with her younger children, and trusting that their eclectic learning style is more than enough. In the meantime, if you'd like to stay updated on the Fearless Family journey, sign up for the Fearless Family Fables below. And don't forget to subscribe or follow here so you're the first to know when part 2 of this discussion is released. Thanks for joining us on the Fearless Homeschool podcast. If you'd like to stay connected in between episodes, check us out on socials at Fearless Homeschool. And if you'd like to hear more about our Fearless Homeschool journey, sign up to our Fearless Family Fables newsletter. But don't forget to subscribe so that you're the first to know when a new episode drops. Because
why do it alone?